Bigger than cakes.
Give me some sadness.
Yeah, I was looking forward to it, and then I watched it.
Oh, dry.
Hello, welcome to Bigger Than Capes. I'm Zach, and this week I'm joined by my pretty regular co-host, Will.
Yeah, howdy. How's it going, Chief?
I'm pretty good, yeah. I can't really complain at the moment. It's a rarity.
The weather's a bit bleak, so that you can complain about that. It's a good British thing to do.
I've kind of come to embrace it, though, 30 years in Manchester, you just let it wash over you, literally, most of the time.
Grey's the norm.
Yeah, that's the summer colour, right?
It is round here. I don't know why I did a Cornish accent, but
I'll accept, but I don't understand. So, yeah, I think we're both pretty okay, getting on with the getting ons.
Absolutely. I think I mentioned earlier that I'm now double inoculated, so back out in the wide world.
The dream, yeah, me too. It's all right. Can't complain. Can't.
I didn't really have any side effects with the second one as well. I'd heard like Pfizer. It was the second one that was the real kicker, and it felt like I'd been punched in the arm really hard. But other than that,
yeah,
I was all right.
That's all I had. I don't know if it's the fact that I always feel pretty shit, so I think I was just like,
Yeah. Do you think we've just got used to feeling a bit under the weather? So
I think maybe that's the thing. Maybe everyone's used to being like healthy, and that's
suckers.
That's my true strength. Embracing being unhealthy.
Yeah, the living unwell.
I'm pretty sure that's the moral of this story. Right?
I think it's the moral of most stories.
Good. What a weird first couple of minutes, but let's embrace it. So we're in a Kickstarter heavy period of time. Last week, Angela talked to David Papose about the OZ issue 2 on Kickstarter right now. Next week, me and Angela are going to be reviewing issue 1 of the OZ. And this week, we're going to talk about Kickstarter that has recently arrived. As many seem to. I feel like everything I backed earlier in the year or at the end of last year have suddenly turned up, or digitally turned up at the very least.
Yeah, I tend to get mine in gluts as well. Like 3 or 4 will turn up, and then there'll be 6 months of nothing, and then 6 more will turn up.
The one that's sticking with me at the moment, and I think you're in the same boat, is the Jeff Lemire Matt Kinn
Cosmic Detective.
Yes, which is one of the first I backed last year, and well, here we are, and it's nowhere to be seen yet. So I'm expecting that soon.
Yeah,
right?
I'd hope so.
It's gotta be. I think the expectation was like spring 2021, and I'd say we're pushing autumn at this point.
Yep. Yeah, but it'll
at least in terms of weather, as we mentioned.
It'll turn up,
and I think it will be really cool because it's oversized hardback, right? That's who we are as people.
You know it.
But this week, another sci-fi Kickstarter. We're talking about a cold, dark universe, which was kickstarted tail end of last year, I think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or earlier this year. I don't remember. It's been kickstarted in the past. Get over it. By Black Hole Comics and Entertainment. I didn't really know a lot about Black Hole until this popped up. Basically, they are based in Lansing, Michigan, and were founded in 2019 by Torrin Chenault and Nick Couture. And their kind of like mission statement is that they're dedicated to bringing fans the best stories from the world's most talented creators.
I mean, it seems like a kind of catch-all. That do you think sort of Image Comics are saying we want to bring you fine stories from mediocre creators? It's sort of like saying our mission statement is to make comics. That's it.
Thank you. Good night. Yeah, it is a little bit of a like. Got you, yeah. And I think that is a mission statement of a lot of people. You are correct. They're not limiting themselves to just comics, though. They have listed that they're going to be doing, or are already doing, comics, short stories, creator interviews, graphic novels, and short films.
Okay.
I know there's short stories, I know there's comics, and this is proof that there's graphic novels. I don't really know about creator interviews or short films yet, but I'm open to finding out.
To make, so maybe they'll turn up.
A few months longer, I would guess. You gotta find people. You've got to check Jason David Frank is free, and that's a little running joke for anyone who pays attention to the previous episodes of the podcast. I like to think we have dozens of return listeners.
At least half a dozen.
Oh yeah. I mean, there's 4 podcast hosts, and we listen to some of them. Back on point for just a moment. So, what got me with the Kickstarter was that it was, 8 stories from 16 creators, which is a pretty good first effort from an anthology, I think.
Absolutely.
And that they sold it with great quotes from that were in the descriptions, such as a comic anthology about space, love, and our connection to those around us. Also got stuff like diving into the feelings we've all been feeling during this year.
Specifically this year.
I assume the year was 2020.
I've been having lots of space feelings and sci-fi feelings. They're not wrong.
So many sci-fi feelings, hard sci-fi feelings. Also things like, hopeful stories that highlight the best and worst in humanity, which really got me curious. Is hopeful but also highlights the worst in humanity. That's a niche, and that is our niche, I think.
I think that is our niche, yeah. Like good people doing bad things for good or bad reasons.
Yes. Also, and I think the real seller and what makes Black Hole interesting is that they state that they have a deep passion to help creators tell their stories, especially those stories from marginalized creators. So I think it's nice to have a kind of consciousness of inclusivity and bringing you creators that you might not get anywhere else.
Absolutely. And I think it's one of the great highlights of Kickstarter is that anybody can make a book, and as long as there's an audience there, you're not worrying about selling 1,000 copies. Like you can just sell it to your niche audience, and Kickstarter sort of allows you to do that. And hopefully it means that the audience grows as well, and that these creators become more mainstay creators over time. I think sometimes you just need kind of a foot in the door, don't you? And it's admittedly just a big white boys playground for the most part. And I think if these creators can just kind of get a bit of notice, I'm not saying they should go and work for the big 2, but maybe they're happy, appealing to their kind of niche. I think that's cool too. But either way, I think, as you said, it's a great thing.
Yeah. So, and other people clearly thought that too. I think there were 420-ish backers. I think they were about $1,500 over their funding goal at the end, which was, I think, like $14,500 in dollars. I don't do dollars, So, pretty decent turnout for any Kickstarter, and it ticks all of the Zach and Will boxes, because sci-fi, anthology,
worst of humanity,
and best of humanity.
Yeah.
It's our it's our jam.
It's our stuff.
What also got me is obviously with hopeful sci-fi immediately puts us onto A Wave Blue World, which is the last anthology we discussed was Maybe Someday.
Yep, it was. It was Maybe Sunday. We haven't done the first one.
No, we should. Let's do that. Let's just keep the sci-fi. We'll be a purely sci-fi anthology podcast, and there's nothing Matt or Angela can do to stop us.
I think we're kind of moving into a good era of the anthology comic. Like, I think it was a big deal in perhaps the sort of 80s, and I think at the moment we're getting a bit of a resurgence of the anthology comic, and I'm cool with it.
As am I. I think, like, DC, I think, have always kind of kept a foot in it with, like, doing, like, the Halloween anthology or the Christmas. If I do them all in the Halloween voice, it just says
Easter,
the Valentine's Day. I don't know what's wrong with me today. But, yeah, it definitely seems like we're in a good anthology space at the moment. There's been a lot of them on Kickstarter. And it's just nice because it gets so many creators involved, which is pretty rare. And that's why there's so many of them on Kickstarter, because then more people see that it all adds up.
That's it. It's a good thing. No, I'm into it. And I know, like, some Kickstarters have sort of ripped people off and never produce what they said they're going to. But I think comics seem relatively risk-free. Like, a game, I appreciate, can take years to sort of produce and money, and if it runs out, then it doesn't get finished. But comics are fairly cheap and have a fairly low kind of people requirement to make it happen. So
yeah, I've never been let down by a comic book Kickstarter.
Nor I so far.
That's definitely a good start. So
one off Indiegogo just to give a bit of balance to the other platforms.
Other platforms are available.
Yeah. Unless Kickstarter, you want to sponsor us, then we will take your money.
Oh yeah, we'll sell out in a heartbeat.
Just putting that on the table.
we're incredibly flexible. I think at this point we've stated that, like, if Kickstarter want us, we're in. If Marvel want us, we'll go back on everything we've said for the last 8 months.
Yeah, the very premise of the podcast will be reversed.
I don't think Marvel are interested, but who the hell knows?
Maybe they're really into you guys just trashing what they do.
I don't think we're ever that harsh.
Maybe you edit me out.
So we've got 8 stories to go at, and we're already like 12-13 minutes in. Should we
let's get on with
the business?
Okay. So the first story is called Interloper. It's written by Jared Luan. The art is by Casey Quevedo. The letterer is Rob Jones, and the editor is Sarah Harding. I thought this was a decent opener. I think the art in it was pretty good. I think the coloring's really nice in it. Quite a cartoony style. It's got a angry robot called S4. That's always a trope that I like ever since. It's called HK-47 from Knights of the Old Republic game. So I'm always up for a robot with attitude.
I really thought you were going to go to SO, but we're still Star Wars either way.
It's another good call, but mine's older.
Yeah, and well played. In a nutshell, this is basically the story of 2 stowaways on a spaceship.
Yeah, and it's not something that gives you a huge amount of backstory to the world that they live in. It's kind of keeps it to this fairly small story of 2 stowaways being chased by sort of a galactic gangster.
Pretty much, with many kind of robot soldiers, security. I don't know what you want to call those guys.
Yeah,
many robot people.
But I think it's quite funny in this one as well. Like the robot's a chef, That's his primary function. But when they start fighting, he changes his pinny from kiss the chef to fear the chef, and then screams, "For the scallops, I must be ready." And I thought that was pretty good.
that was a highlight. As soon as he says, like, "Oh, let me change my apron," I'm on board. This was a really fun start to the anthology, and I think it did come away with quite a nice message.
I think compared to some, it's a little bit light on sort of world building. I think some of them do a much better job of kind of place setting. Maybe you could argue it's not really relevant for this story. It's okay as a kind of small tale, but I say some of them really kind of told you a lot about the world in very excellent ways. But the art was good on this one. The kind of full page of S4 moving down a corridor,
smashing robots
on the way. That's really cool. It's a good bit. I think
that's definitely a highlight for me.
Yeah, absolutely. It felt just a little bit light on story overall, but I think the kind of art and some of the script is fun. I think it's a nice opener.
Yeah, I think the simplicity of it makes it quite a standout in the fact that it's simple, but it tells the story it needs to tell. It comes away with a nice message, and it's got a funny murder chef robot, and I didn't know that's what I was particularly looking for in this. That's definitely how I felt in 2020. I don't know about it.
Yeah, I felt like I was a robot chef that was forced to kill people. That sums me up.
I also really like the last page with the kind of full page spread with the planet and just the ship. Some nice,
Absolutely, a lot of kind of purpley,
some nice sci-fi,
purple colorings, and I think the color really kind of elevates it. I think that's
and I really like purple. I think that's what's most important here.
That's the most important thing. But yeah, really solid start on that one. I think this is something that I'd sort of quite like to see what these creators go on to do.
I'd even be happy to see an extension of this to kind of flesh out these characters that we're given and like the world they're in. I'd be happy to have that,
Indeed, if this was like a launching platform for series, I think this would be one of the ones that I would, be interested in seeing kind of what happens next.
Yeah, definitely. It's almost obviously not as fleshed out because I'm about to compare it to something that's like 4 issues in, but kind of reminded me of Beckstar from Mad Cave in some ways. The kind of, being on the run, the sudden developments. I think Beckstar was quite fast and it's fast paced, and I can kind of see a similarity with, ragtag crew of misfits on a spaceship. You want to move on to whatever the next one is?
Yeah, the next one's Hunters. Do you want to take that one?
I can take Hunters. So, The Hunters is written by Calvin Sanders, artisted by Dominic Pickle Rockets, lettered again by Rob Jones, and edited by Torrin Chenault, who is the man we mentioned earlier, who is in charge of this thing.
The Thing, yep.
The Thing, yeah. So this is kind of a bounty hunters in space story, but kind of a Western as well.
Mm-hmm.
Basically follows the story of a bounty hunter who's trying to hunt down a prisoner by the name of Famine, who has been imprisoned on the prison planet Earth. And swerve. Sets out with is it Maeve? Is Maeve the main? It's Maeve, right?
Yes.
Maeve and Bob the robot.
Indeed.
Set out to try and track down Famine. And betrayal ensues. In a nutshell.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
Don't think I've ever said that sentence before, but betrayal ensues. Yeah, basically they get a tip of where Famine's hiding out from their old friend Kate and head off. And when they get there, it's
Betrayal ensues. I think you summed it.
Betrayal ensues. Yeah, this was an interesting one. I quite liked the kind of space western vibes, and there's something about putting a bar in space that's like in a bubble but has like the batwing doors that just amuses me. I don't know. Must just be something that speaks to me on a I don't know,
saloon doors, but in a space on a moon somewhere.
Yeah, I don't know why that got me. I feel like this is a bit of a weird journey. It's a bit of a weird like progression from one thing to the next, but again, it kind of has some twists in the story and ends with kind of a positive message, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of positive messages here. I think that's something throughout this as an anthology. Things tend to have a message, and it does tend to be quite positive. It can be a weird journey to get to that message.
Yeah,
but
I think some are better at it than others. I'm less fond of this one. The art doesn't really work for me. I think it's kind of very cartoony, but I think the colouring's quite flat as well, and everything looks sort of quite 2D.
I think that's fair.
It's very stylized, and I can imagine some people are really into it, but it just doesn't tick my boxes on this one. And as you said, I think the other thing was that I don't think it's paced very well.
Yeah, and I think most of these stories are like 12 to 16 pages, I guess. I could be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I think my numbers are close. And I think that is quite a hard length to kind of write to, because what most comics like single issues are normally like 22, 24 pages.
Yeah.
So you can do a lot in an extra like 4 to 8 pages, whatever. And yeah, I do feel like perhaps some of these stories were written with a page count in mind rather than the length that they needed. I think an extra couple of pages in this one could have probably helped a lot.
Yeah, I think it doesn't help as well that some of the stories in here, I think, kind of nail their short concept. And I think, I don't know, we spend a lot of time, a lot of pages with the bar finding out about the bounty, and then the actual kind of tracking of the bounty is incredibly simple. They get told about a planet, they go to the planet, and yep, there they are.
Then we also have like a confrontation with a former friend, colleague in the bar, which is a bit weird. It kind of establishes Maeve as kind of badass,
a rogue.
But,
yeah,
but doesn't really make good on that at the end. I don't know.
Without the context as well, it's kind of hard to care about, sort of betrayal. I don't think we'd got to know Maeve well enough. Get the idea it was kind of a Captain Mal, thing. Like he's a rugged and charming character, but he's got a bit of a checkered past. And I think that was the insinuation for Maeve, but I don't think we got to know Maeve well enough for it to kind of matter.
I think that's fair. Yes, I'm inclined to agree with you on that one.
I did quite like the twist ending, and to be fair to the art, there's a scene when the ship kind of stretches out when it's going into light speed. That was a cool art idea. I just think it's the actual kind of application and the design that doesn't really work for me.
I'm also another panel I do like a lot. There's a panel of Famine with a kind of load of flies going away. Which is just pretty cool, pretty weird. Again, there's a lot of weirdness in my descriptions today. But
people also have strange fingers that I don't like.
Don't get me wrong, hands are hard to draw. If any part of, making the mistake of doing art taught me, hands are hard. But yeah, we've got some quite long
kind of
fingers.
spidery fingers. They're just a bit freaky. So yeah, I don't know, applaud the attempt on this one, but didn't quite hit the spot, this one. And I thought the message again is quite decent. The sort of twist ending I thought was quite good, but I say we take so long getting to that bit. I think it would be better cutting the bar scene down to a couple of pages and doing more of the bounty hunting. I think might have been a better balance, but hey.
I agree. I think, less bar scene, more bounty hunting scene would have perhaps been a good call.
Where they eat a bounty together.
So do you want to take the next one, which is The God's Head?
Absolutely. The God's Head. Written by Candace Rugg, artist Alex Smith, lettered by Rob Jones, again, prolific, and edited by Torren Chenault, I think is how we have collectively decided. And this is broadly the story of kind of an arc of humanity have been sent to a second Earth to ease population and pollution and etc. And of course, when they get there, it's already a wasteland and betrayal ensues.
Is that like a catchphrase we're running with now? Betrayal ensues.
Whether it does or not, but there is a little bit of betrayal going on in there.
Oh, definitely, yeah. Some betrayal does ensue. I'll give you that. Not sure what the past tense of ensue is. Like ensued.
I think so. I think ensued. I like ensued though. I tried to get swat into the vocabulary as the past tense of sweat. It's not like sweated. You say, God, it's hot in there. I swat buckets.
It sounds right.
Done it, but it never caught on. Maybe this is my new platform. Start fresh.
How often do you use swat?
Every time I swat. Duh.
Sorry, yeah, obviously. Matt, that's completely derailed me.
Well, I shall pick up the thread. This is one of the ones which I think was a bit of a highlight for me. I really like the art in this, the kind of Schindler's List style monochrome of just having kind of details of red. I think the kind of penciling on the faces and the design of the suits and the ship are pretty cool. Like they are functional more than sort of stylish, but I think that also suits the type of story. It's quite a serious sci-fi, this one.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think this is it almost comes as a surprise after two kind of more cartoony feeling stories. This is a serious departure, and I really like this art. It's again, it takes some twists, and I don't know. Did you expect like monochrome carnage monsters to rock up?
I didn't, but I did quite enjoy the sort of horror bent. I think you could have told the same story without the monsters. Like, I don't think they're an integral part of the message or the tale it's telling, but they look pretty cool, and it does bring in some like high violence at some points.
Yeah, it completely surprised me, and it's a minimalist cast of characters, but I think it's a good array. So we've got Orwin, Rogers, Ella, and Silvers, I think.
Yep, I think that's everyone.
We also have General Chambers, who is only in one scene. So, yeah.
He's so sorry.
So sorry. So sorry. But I think scenes like the ship explosion is a really really good, brutal, and makes good use of the kind of black, white, grey, red.
Yeah, the kind of colouring,
got the most red, I think.
Absolutely, and the kind of colouring and effects combined with like just really excellent kind of pencil work, I think is it's one of my favourite pages, maybe of the whole book. I think that's it's a stunner.
Yeah, I think that's up there. I'll give you that. But yeah, I kind of got like, I guess like Walking Dead in space vibes for some of this.
Absolutely,
that makes sense. There's a
kind of small group of survivors.
But yeah, some interesting twists and some things I just didn't expect. Also, I've just got this word written down. These words written down, which is hope as a sound effect.
Yes.
Because that is how this ends, and I just don't know what else to say.
It's very kind of manga, isn't it? Like having an emotion as a sound effect.
Yeah, kind of. And I don't know. Ever since I've been like, wow, how do I make a song that sounds like Hope so I can use the name Hope as a sound effect? Because
it's a good premise.
Yeah, and I love the idea that if this was like being made into a film or like an animated short or something, it's like, no, I need this to sound like Hope.
Have you got a Hope button? Has anybody got the Hope?
Is that somewhere on the keyboard? Is the No, I appreciate I am being a bit of a dick, but I don't know. I like the sentiment of it. But it also just immediately hit me as that's funny. It's not meant to be. But I appreciate it's my own mind putting together the sentence "hope" as a sound effect. But yes,
no, I think you nailed it. Yeah, I really, really like this one. I think I think the actual kind of plot and the big twist could be kind of a little bit underwritten, in as much that there are lots of ways that it might not make sense. And I think because it's a short story and it leaves that vagary, like it's not really important necessarily. But despite that, I think the kind of character dialogue was good, and I just thought the art was fantastic. Like I think this was one of the standout arts for me, for sure.
Definitely, and I did think with this is the kind of story that could have been a full trade or a full series. I think you could have stretched this out and dug into the different ideas pretty much for as long as you wanted to. Okay, maybe not in a Walking Dead way where it's as long as possible, but I think you could have got a few volumes of this story, of twists and turns of it all.
Absolutely, with definitely you could have done. I think it works very well in its small format. I think this is one of the ones that kind of pulls off its premise in the page space that it's got.
Yeah, definitely. This is one of my favorites, and I was fairly sure this was going to be one of your favorites as well. So,
picked it out.
Yeah.
The grimmest one so far.
That's the thing, just like which is the one that seems bleak. That's where Will lives.
Tick.
So next up is What Are We Worth? It was written by Casey Flynn with arts by Kiana Kremer, lettered by Rob Jones, and edited by Torrin Chenault. I feel like the letterer and the editors aren't changing much, but we're just going to keep crediting them anyway.
Yeah, just going to keep pushing through. They might change, and then if we miss it, then we'll feel bad. So.
We'll feel bad. Yeah, that's true. You know, you don't want to miss out. I get the distinct feeling it's the same letterer for the entire thing, but hey, ready for Rob to prove me wrong and no show one of the lettering jobs. So, in a nutshell, this is Do I keep saying in a nutshell, or am I?
You said in a nutshell a fair amount, but I think that's okay. I think it's within tolerances of nutshells.
Good. So this is basically, there's been an ongoing war, and the good guys, question mark, that the people we're following, their military decides to use the ultimate weapon, the planet cracker,
Yeah, not the Death Star.
to end this ongoing conflict. But that's not the story. That's just the premise. So once they've ended the conflict, we follow Elle and Cam, who basically work cleaning up debris from space battles, which then opens up the debate of, like, if, you know, if Elle gets cut from he's drifting around in space, you know, collecting debris. If he gets cut free, it's kind of company policy that they just let him drift off because it's not worth the effort of saving him. Is it an acceptable risk that is described as, or
It's not profitable. Not profitable to go and save them.
that's the one? Thank you. So a pretty bleak little topic that we get ourselves onto.
Absolutely. The first thing that my read was that Elle was a woman. I don't think it, you know, I think like the ambiguity is absolutely fine. It really doesn't matter for the purpose of the plot. But my read from the art that Elle was a woman.
That is a good point. You could be right.
Again, it really doesn't matter one way or the other because the story doesn't revolve around that particular point. But anyway, that was that. So I'm going to refer to her as a she, and you can refer to him as a he. And
do we meet in the middle and go they?
Schlim and Schlur. Futurama fans out
there. No, you could be right. I don't know. Yeah, you could well be correct. Interesting. I think this is going to sound ludicrous, but I just carried over that I read Hollow Heart on the same day, and that also has an Elle, who is a man in a giant, I don't know, metal suit. So I guess I was just carrying over that.
Yeah, I say
that this is the same Elle.
Because it's a story where it isn't important, I guess, and because if Elle is a woman, she's not been ludicrously sexualized. So I think the ambiguity is fine. And in fact, it could be looked at as a good thing to say, well, you know, it doesn't matter. So our interpretations are both equally valid, I think. Anyway, that's that.
Yes.
This is another one, I'll be honest, it kind of just missed the mark for me. I do quite like the art.
Yeah, I like the art. That's fair. And I think, again, I keep saying the same damn things. I think it's got it's got a nice message. I think it ends with what Elle needs to hear, and it kind of tells us a lot about Elle and a lot about Cam in quite a short period of time.
I think it's successful at doing that. I think my issue is with it is that, as you mentioned, it starts off with the kind of tail end of this war, which you don't really learn anything about, like why it was fought, whether these are the good guys or not. And I'm guessing that's on purpose. Like they don't want the story to be about the war itself. But then the message that they give is kind of just done in exposition. Like they're just going about their jobs, and actually what they're doing in space isn't that interesting. And they just kind of tell you what their thoughts are. And it's not like a massive negative, but I just don't think the art and the story gelled in this one. I don't think the story was doing much of I don't think the art was doing much of the storytelling. It almost all came through the dialogue. And while I enjoyed the art, that lack of meshing, I think, was a little bit of an issue for me.
I can definitely see where you're coming from. I think it is essentially just a conversation. So the art, whilst nice, doesn't particularly have much it can do. I think it works to convey the emotion, and I think the facial expressions we get are pretty good.
If this was part
on display, I'd not picked up on that on my first read, but
quite juicy.
Quite
I think if this were part of, say, this was an anthology series all of its own, a story about these two kind of space junk collectors going from place to place, and each time you learned more about the different wars that they were kind of collecting stuff and they found interesting things, I think that would be a really interesting story. And I like these characters enough that I would like to read that. But in this, I just don't think you get enough of that. The sci-fi element of it is kind of just background to the story and the message, which I say I don't want to sound too down on it, because I think the story's good. I like the characters, I like the message, but if I'm looking at this as a comic book specifically, I just don't think it gels the two halves of what a comic is.
I think that's fair. I also quite like your pitch of a full anthology of space scavengers. That'd
be cool, right? Written by different people, but the same two
just
characters.
Cleaning up space.
Yeah, and every time, like, what they find is the kind of the crux of the story, and or it could just be a conversation about life that they have while picking up debris. But if it's in the middle of other plots, I think that fits better. I don't know. Are you writing that down to post to yourself?
I feel like I don't know if we can. I feel like we probably need to cut Casey Flynn and Kiana Kramer in on this to do like a 4-way like Kickstarter campaign. I think that we'll kickstart that. We'll get some other creators in because we don't know what we're doing.
Yeah, we're exec producers.
Yeah, it'll be a kind of Bigger Than Capes presents, where we kind of take that Stan Lee role where we've not read your book and we're not responsible for it, but we just want you to know that we're here if you need us.
Yeah, we'll just say you're great. We'll just say you're great, and that's that.
Yeah, and we can write one. I think we've both got a space cleaner upper story in us, right?
Yeah, why not? But I thought this was just kind of a narrow miss for me. Didn't quite. I think just didn't quite.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I like the art and I like the writing, and I feel like the two things perhaps just need to be a little bit closer together in what they reflect. It's nice seeing the different perspectives, obviously, as Elle drifts around in space and Cam gets to tell his story whilst, reminiscing on the giant space bin man
garbage truck.
Yeah. What's the English term for that? What's an English garbage truck called? Bin? Van? Bin?
Now you've posed the question. Yeah, I don't know. Bin wagon? Bin? I have no idea.
Bin wagon sounds plausible, but it also sounds like something that you've just made up as well.
Yeah, possibly.
Chuck it in the bin wagon, Don't know, yeah. Space bin wagon. That's the clean sweep 1281Z. That's what it's called.
That's the colour.
That's the ship. Job done. Yeah, whatever Will's point was, I agree largely. Because I'm just talking. I'm just chasing bin wagons down the street. And I don't know what I'm going on about anymore. Drifting after the old bin wagon.
All right, should we go on to the next one?
Yeah.
Right, the next one is Space Punks. It's written by Nick Couture, who is the other half of the Kickstarter now.
Yeah.
Great. The artist is Gabby Scanlon. It's lettered by everybody's favourite Rob Jones. And it is editored by Sarah Harding, who I think editored the first book as well.
I like how you keep saying editored.
Yeah, I've decided to really own it.
Yeah. Not bad. I like it.
And this is the story of a kind of armed robber on Mars kind of plotting and carrying out a crime, pretty much.
Yes. I will say I did quite like the art on the first page. I thought the kind of like increasingly big shot of Mars was kind of cool.
And I've probably mentioned this a lot, but it had a bit of a Prophet vibe, which is already a nice start for me.
I had a feeling you were going to say that. Yeah, it's definitely got a bit of a Brandon Graham Prophet kind of vibe. Kind of cartoony, but this is going to sound so dumb, but like not intentionally cartoony.
I think I know what you mean. Yeah.
Don't know how to explain that in better words. I need to learn more words if we're going to keep doing a podcast. First big question for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a tapas restaurant that they eat at. They're eating a Top Dog Tapas that does hot dogs and fries. It doesn't add up to me.
Yeah, unless they're very tiny hot dogs and fries and you have like 16 of them.
Yeah, in which case, fair play. But that's not how that hot dog. That is a full size hot dog. So
actually, has anybody done that? You know, like little burger sliders. You can have all different ones, and then like a slider tapas restaurant where you just order like lots of little burgers, chicken, beef, and blue cheese on one, and then like pickles on one, and that'd be good.
I'm gonna give a shout out now to a restaurant that aren't gonna hear this, but there's a place in a town near Barcelona called P Tapas that do like little burgers and little hot dogs. But God damn, that's good food, and
it doesn't.
If they want to sponsor us all day, yeah.
Oh yeah,
I mean, I will gladly relocate for a good restaurant. Is that who I am? I think that's who I am. Yeah.
We could start doing the podcast in Spanish. I mean, I don't speak a word, but
I think we'd learn. If there was enough free food, I think we would quickly adapt.
It'd be worth it.
I don't know what the tapas comic book crossover like fandom is. I don't know if there is one, but if there is, I'm happy to capitalize on that very specific market.
Yep.
Sorry, the point, I believe. I'll let you get back to
it. This feels like another book where the element of sci-fi is kind of irrelevant. Like it's set on Mars, but the city looks like it could be like New York. Other than the fact that everything's sort of red, like nothing is. I did consider like, is it a story about nostalgia? You know, like they go to a baseball game and it's just the same as it would be on Earth, and his best friend is obsessed by like 90s nostalgia, and like, is it a story about kind of humanity's grasp on the familiar, and you would go all the way to Mars to build the same city again? I think if that were the case, that would be good, but if it is, it doesn't follow through on it.
I feel like that's definitely part of the premise. Like I definitely got the kind of nostalgia aspect. This is also, I think, the first time I've seen someone wearing a FUBU hoodie in a comic book or in any media in like 20 years. So yeah, 90s.
I was particularly impressed with the Game Boy that had the attached like curly light that you could get on it because it wasn't backlit. That's excellent detail.
God, the Game Boy SP took too long to come around with that backlight. You know, revelation, didn't it?
Yeah.
What was that like? That was probably was the Game Boy SP like probably the 2000s?
Oh, I think so. Certainly I had the SP like clamshell one. I think that was later still. It's good.
Oh,
good
they were
machine,
good.
man. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Still got it.
I don't.
Go and dig it.
Disappointingly.
Might go and dig it out, play a bit of Tetris.
I've got a lot of my Nintendo consoles. I've got my NES, SNES, 64, missing my GameCube. I've got my Wii, my Wii U.
I I've got a GameCube if we get together. I've got a GameCube and the Advance SP. If we get together, we can probably finish this.
Which I don't have. I don't have my Game Boy anymore, most upsettingly. I really want a Virtual Boy. I know they're shit, but I just want to have one.
Filling in the gaps.
Anywho, talking of nostalgia.
For another shout out that's not going to help us, I've got a friend who goes by the name Joe Bleeps who refurbs Game Boys, so he can probably hook you up.
Nice. And Joe Bleeps is a good name.
Also does chiptune.
Oh, lovely stuff. I love me a bit of chiptune. But the masks they pick to go and rob the store, I mean, they're provided by his 90s loving friend, but are Pinhead, Scream Guy,
and Jason Voorhees.
And Jason, yeah. So again, a good nostalgia kick. I just don't think the plot really fills that out. The plot seems to be this guy kind of down on his luck, commits a crime, gets caught, goes to sort of space prison, works on a space mine, and then it's all right again at the end. Nah.
Yeah, I was kind of into where this was going. I liked the nostalgia threads it was pulling at. His motivation for robbing the place kind of threw me because his girlfriend Sophia seems to is he Antonio? Yeah, he's Antonio and she's Sophia. And she doesn't seem to be like strapped for cash. Okay, obviously he's robbing places, so I guess he's not strapped for cash. But she doesn't seem to be like, hey man, we're broke, go rob some banks. She just seems to be like, why are you robbing banks, you jackass?
Yeah.
Which is really odd to me. It doesn't flow I feel like we don't understand why he's robbing banks very much. No, he isn't robbing banks. That's part of the problem. First up, not robbing banks.
Convenience stores, as the Yanks might say.
Yeah. Yeah. Jono's corner shop, nonetheless. Yeah. And yeah, I don't really get his motivation. And then the fact that he comes and confesses to his girlfriend and she's just like, don't worry about it. My dad's got a mine you can go and work on out in the wastelands. It'll be 5 years though, so. And he goes, all right. Yeah, I can go and do that for 5 years. But I don't know. And then when he comes back and hangs out with his 90s loving bud McKay and everything's the same, McKay's got a kid now and they do some complex handshake to show that they're still buds, but confused is what I am.
Yeah, I didn't quite get the threads, and I don't think, as you mentioned, we don't really learn enough about Antonio to really sort of care. I think by the end, I don't know, I just didn't feel drawn to Antonio as a character.
I agree. And it's a shame because, like I say, to begin with, I was pretty on board with this, but it kind of got away from me quite abruptly, I think.
I just think I think the ending's just kind of falls a bit flat. And because it's so short, it kind of lives with you, doesn't it? So the good stuff it's set up in the first kind of portion, I don't know, kind of gets overwhelmed a little bit. As far as the art goes, I actually think I prefer the colouring than the art itself. I think the colouring's really cool.
The colouring is nice. I think, don't get me wrong, I think that there's some great aspects within the art, though.
No, that's fair, actually, yeah. Don't be too harsh on the art.
I think, actually, the kind of 5 years later shot we get of the mine and then Antonio on the train back is a really nice panel. Nice page. It kind of is really well balanced.
I would agree with that. I guess what I'm saying is it's just kind of not my favourite art, but it's not fair to say that I don't think it's bad by any stretch of the imagination. And as you say, like the funky handshake, the kind of composition, how that's put together, I think is quite cool. Some of the kind of design bits of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. There's some great design things, and I think the kind of exploded out shot of the car with all the 90s nostalgia coming off of it. It's good. It's a good page.
It's good stuff.
I almost feel like maybe this is too hung up on the 90s nostalgia too. It feels like the bank robbery isn't fuck me. I'm obsessed with robbing banks.
You are. I've said this about you before. You need to stop robbing banks and thinking about robbing banks and start robbing smaller establishments.
The armed robbery feels like one section. The 90s nostalgia, Antonio and McKay hanging out feels like another. And then the quick transition to here I am doing some mining. I'm coming back now. I don't know. It feels like 3 chapters in a story, but they're not continuous chapters. There's other chapters happening.
Yeah, stuff's happened in between. And I mean, I'm no writer, and I don't think I could necessarily do a better job. But I think the kind of nostalgia bent on it was my favourite part, and I sort of wish it had lent into that. This idea of, getting to the future, exploring space, and then just kind of being obsessed with what you'd left behind, I think is quite compelling. But I say I don't think it holds on to that long enough for my money.
That's fair. That has just made me question though, is the 90s, is the nostalgia a tie into the written in 2020 and looking back at the days of, back before 2020 when, it was all Game Boy lights and 90s rap.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that. I just sort of wish it would double down on that. I just think the kind of the robbery and mining stuff doesn't lend itself to what I've taken away as the kind of interesting part of the story. Mm-hmm. So that's my stance. Sticking with it.
So next up is Rob Robertson. No, Rob Robertson.
Robertson. He's a robot.
I feel like whoever named it, and I'm going to guess that is writer and artist Louis Santamarina, I think is probably the one responsible for Robertson. It's so alien to say Robertson. That I keep forcing it to have extra letters. Also lettered by Rob Jones, edited by Turin. Just Turin now. I'm just I don't know. Just
maybe Cheno. I don't know.
Oh God! Don't open the door of me saying other words I can't do.
No, let's talk Robertson.
In essence, this story is the story of a group of post-apocalyptic scavengers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, post-apocalyptic scavengers. What I'm going with.
That. Yeah.
The names we get are Hardback, Olneo, and Cassius. There are more than that. There's an extra one who doesn't get named, I don't think, but those are a turtle, an owl, and a wolf person, or a dog person, maybe more specifically, who are kind of scavenging around, and we don't know why, but Olneo is not getting any memories of who he is. So they're scavenging and they come across this robot's head, and Olneo is like, maybe it'll tell me who I am. Don't know why it works. And basically pops his sword into this robot's head and can see all of the robot's memories. I don't know why that's how it would work, but that he would plug into this robot and know who he is. But he plugs into this robot and they basically get a look into this robot's past, essentially. That kind of does just some weird time jumping because reasons.
I think you just get kind of segments of its memory, don't you, at different points of this kind of increasingly delusional robot who is sort of obsessed with the human race, despite the fact that they appear to have been completely wiped out by this point.
Yeah, and he's just kind of strolling around the planet talking to himself, but he thinks he's talking to John and Beatrice, who I guess were, well, we see him at the start on his ship with a skeleton, and he's got a killer line, which is, "Oh, Beatrice, John will be home soon. He hasn't been the same since food and water ran out 190 years ago." Which is just like, all right. And I don't know, he just, increasingly delusional, strolling around Earth, trying to like evaluate the situation of where we all went. And I don't know, he gets picked up by a bird at one point, and then he's got a little cowboy hat and he's jetpacking around. It's such it's a real weird ride, but he's kind of adorable in his surrealness, I guess. What do you think?
I absolutely love this. This is my other big favorite of this series. Firstly, I think the art has that kind of Stoko style mushiness to the cartooning that I immediately really like. I think it's genuinely funny, including the bit you pointed out. I like the bit when he says, according to the theoretical framework and the data from the fieldwork, mankind has transcended to another dimension. It evolved to another state of consciousness. And then as he walks away, it's just huge piles of skulls and bones. He's just increasingly delusional about what's going on. But I also love the fact that it starts off with this weird, like you say, semi-fantasy story of a alleged chosen one who has no memory but also has a magic sword. But all of his companions are absolutely sick of hearing about it. Every time he pulls out his sword, they're like, "Oh, not this again." And I just found it so funny. And I think, as I was saying about some of the others where the pacing didn't quite work, this manages to tell two almost complete stories at the same time. I think both the little fantasy scavengers and the robot story are both great. I think they're both really funny.
I agree. I was really surprised by this because it's such a weird mash of two ideas, but both of them carry really well. And this is one of the most cartoony in style for the art, but I think it just nails it. It really suits this style, and I don't know, the chaos of the story really makes it work. And I feel like you could tell me a load of stories of just an owl person walking around stabbing things, hoping to find out who he is. Yeah, I'd read that. And I don't know if I'd understand most of it, but I'd read it.
I think it's one of those that, again, the lack of backstory about who he is feels like it's made all right by the fact that they're so sick of him constantly retelling this story that it just makes the fact that you don't know funny as well.
And I like the fact that they're like this kind of almost masters of the universe-esque gang of misfits who are all in battle armor and animal people just strolling around clueless.
One of them's got a sweet keytar that can pick up scrap.
Yeah, and then there's Hardback the turtle, who's got a old school aviator helmet on with the goggles and everything. It's good. It's weird. A detail I really liked as well is that the paneling when we're in, I'm going to guess Rob is the robot, right?
Yeah, I would guess so, yeah.
I would assume so. When his memories are cut in between scenes, they're all kind of glitchy around the edges and there's little squares cut out of them.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's very cool.
Yeah, very much my kind of detail that I'm sure most people don't care about, but
I think that's it. This is probably the story with the least kind of message, I guess. It's just a fun romp, but the art and the writing and the script I just thought were an absolute perfect marriage. I really, really like the vibe of this, and I would definitely read either more of this story or just more of this person. I'm completely on board.
Yeah, oh, definitely. I could go for more of this quite comfortably. Just a really good standalone story that is bizarre, but pretty lovable.
Yeah.
You want to take the next one?
I will take the next one. This is The Life Giver. It's written by Gabe Gonzalez. The art is by Elizabeth Mallette. It is lettered by Rob Jones, and it's edited again by edited by Sarah Harding. And
yes,
this is the story of humanity has ended up on these kind of space arcs that look like giant whales that kind of survive around a giant tree. And it's supposed to be a combination of technology and nature. Earth has been ruined, and now everybody lives on these kind of arcs. But within the arc, a sort of insidious cult has formed, hell-bent on kind of destroying the ship and the ecosystem under the guise of a kind of Gaia, Mother Earth style religion, I suppose. And we follow the daughter of one of the creators, whose name has slipped my mind.
Noelle.
Noella, thank you. As she kind of comes up against this cult.
Yes, she does. It's quite a good story, I thought. I feel like there's some details that I would like to know that we don't particularly get, but
sure, yeah.
I feel like it wraps itself up pretty tidily, although a little bit, like we've said previously, it's quite a sudden ending. I think the pacing isn't 100%. Mm-hmm. I like that her friend is inexplicably a masked wrestler who we never get the real name of. He's just the Flying Violet.
Yeah.
We're basically told nothing about that.
Apart from the fact he's rubbish at it.
Yeah, and just it was a draw. The last time it was a draw. It didn't lose, it was a draw. Is the kind of bratty argument that, I am all about. But I liked this a lot. I just thought it had quite a nice message, and the cult were pretty creepy, but kind of believable, I think.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, I thought the cult stuff was some of the kind of strongest bit about it, like their message, why they're doing what they're doing. And as any kind of good cult should do, it makes a little bit of sense, like just enough that you see why people are convinced by it. I think that's good writing. I think, again, it has very cartoony and fairly simple art, but I think it is of a pretty high quality. And although the colouring is sort of two-dimensional and flat, which I criticised the Hunters for, but I think this one has better kind of like light effects and a little bit of shade in here and there that just kind of give things a bit more depth. Sometimes it is quite, kind of flat colouring, but I don't know, worked for me better here than it did in the other one.
I think it just complements the art just that little bit more. I do have one complaint, and this has nothing to do with the art, but it did affect the art, so I'm going to throw that in while we're talking art, is that there are some pages, the first is one. So the first, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first 5 pages of this clearly have production markings on them still.
Oh, they do, don't they? A little bit of kind of, little boxing to set out the panels.
Yeah, there's a little box on it, and then the very first page, it's the only one that has page numbers. I don't know what that's about. I don't know if it was left on in printing, because it's in the printed version as well. So I don't know. Clearly it was an accident, but it did distract me.
Yeah, and those pages don't fill. They don't quite fill the page either, do they? Tend to be kind of more different size panels and stuff, and then when you get a full page, it does still. Some of them do still have the marking on, and the ones that have the marking have the page numbers. Weirdly. Yeah,
so I don't know if they were meant to be cropped or if they were meant to. I don't know. There's something in the production there that's not quite on.
It does seem a little bit of a mistake. I've got to be honest, I actually didn't notice the first time round until you've pointed it out. So I'm not going to be
that's where you and me differ, Will.
Indeed, yeah, very detail orientated. I'm not going to mark it down too harsh on that. I thought there were bits where, like, there's one panel where they're out at night and the art is incredibly dark. And despite the fact you can't really see it, I still think it's quite effective. I think it makes it look dark.
I liked that. Yeah, I think, as you've said, the lighting effects are quite well done. And to basically, put shadow over a large portion of the page and it still be quite clear what's happening is impressive. Especially if you're reading on, I wonder if that's how much that differs from the paper to the digital version. There's a question for you.
It's a good question. I read the digital one just to.
I don't know why. I know exactly why. It's because I'm lazy. It's slightly clearer in the digital one because iPads are backlit. I couldn't be bothered the other day walking to a different room to get the printed copy, so I started reading it also on the tablet at the same time.
Because it was like 6 paces away.
It's like, 2 rooms. I'm not going that far.
But I think the second page is a good example of the really good lighting and shading, where her dark bedroom is lit by a kind of blue computer screen, and it just picks out the edges of the things in her room, and it really gives it a just very believable atmosphere. I think does kind of look like what a room looks like lit by a screen.
I completely agree. I think it looks really nice, and I hadn't noticed the detail before actually that she's got like all the plants she can possibly fit in her room, which is then obviously the point of this story in many ways.
Yeah, that's it. That kind of conflagration of nature and science. As you said, I think the message is really good. I think it does kind of stick its landing. It's one of those that, because it is a short story, it's kind of a bit convenient of an ending. You know, like you say, it happens very suddenly and everything sort of works out. And sometimes I think with these short stories, they feel a bit better when the ending is a bit more ambiguous. Like this very much wraps up the issue of the story, and it feels like they lived happily ever after. You know, it doesn't feel like there's any further story to tell as far as that's concerned. And then sometimes it's kind of left a bit open. And I think that sometimes works a bit better, but I didn't mind this at all. It's a nice ending. And for the most part, I think tells its story very well in its limited page space.
I agree. I think it's a nice ending, and I think it really really packs in as much as it can in not very many pages.
Absolutely.
And I'm invested in Flying Violet, you know.
All for it.
Whatever. It's just that bit where he's like, you know, while you were asleep, they made me light heavyweight champion. Because they thought I deserved, and it's just that they thought I deserved something. It's like, so you didn't win. You didn't. It's just like you're doing good, kid. Have a title.
Yeah, most effort. I remember going on a skiing trip with school, and I got a medal for like perseverance. Bit of a backhanded slap, that, isn't it?
Yeah, it's like you weren't good, but
yeah, you kept getting back up, which sure is something.
I can't, you know, I respect that in an award.
Yeah, it's patronising.
Yeah. So our last story is the, you know, titular A Cold, Dark Universe. It is written by Torin Chenault. It is artisted, I need to stop saying artisted, by Christine Gutierrez. And it is lettered by Rob Jones, and it is also edited by Torin and Christine.
But proof that Rob Jones is the MVP of this book.
Yep.
The consistent letterer.
Powers through, turns up for everybody.
Absolutely. Good work, Rob.
Yeah, credit where it's due to Rob.
Maybe he's the Rob Robertson. I mean, we can see his surname, but despite that, I think it could be the case.
You're saying he's actually a little delusional robot?
Pretty convinced. Just some lettering on the side.
And he's not here to tell us otherwise. So
that's
this
9/10 of the law.
So I'm told what. So the world has ended. The people who could leave, I'm told the 1%, bailed as they are known to do, and left, a lot of people around kicking it in the post-apocalyptic Earth. The main family in this, the Johnsons, the Johnsons family company, basically decide to rebuild, and this is set 50 years after that, as we follow the story of Cindy Angela Johnson, or just Cindy for simplicity's sake, who basically, her grandmother is an engineer who teaches Cindy everything she knows about engineering, starting with teaching her how to make prosthetic legs, and then running through with, just anything you can engineer, I guess. And Cindy kind of starts solving problems by engineering. It's explained to us that people blamed technology for the end of the world, so they don't really use it. So she's, bringing it back.
Yeah.
The problem being that her father is kind of a post-apocalyptic warlord, I guess.
Yes. Kind of sort of suburban gangster come warlord, yeah.
Yeah, who is kind of a dick in a nutshell.
Yeah, he's a real dick. Starts to use her kind of inventions for his own ill gains.
This is true, and that kind of comes back to haunt Cindy when her best friend Nathan is kind of put under the chopping block, and misery ensues. Indeed it does.
Not betrayal in this case.
Not betrayal in this case. This is an interesting one. I'm kind of curious as to what your take on it's going to be.
Okay, I shall tell you what my take is going to be. This one didn't work for me either, really.
Okay, fair play.
It's another case, really. I just don't think the art is it's just not my style. And again, I can really see that some people would be super into it. But it's that very kind of two-dimensional, slightly like South Park-y look. I mean, there's a bit where you said it a minute ago and I've already forgotten.
Cindy.
There's a bit where Cindy's kind of walking down a hall, and it's just a series of kind of forced perspective, different coloured walls, and I just think it's quite plain and basic, and it doesn't. There are other times when the detail's much better, but there are just so many backgrounds that are plain coloured walls, and it's a bit of a bugbear of mine, if I'm honest.
I've heard you make this complaint before, and I can understand that. I also I kind of struggled with the use of the Ben-Day dots is quite constant at times, and I'm used to it being like a style of shading, or at least nowadays I'm used to it being like a style of shading, or used quite conservatively, like by people like Tyler Boss. Did he use it in 4 Kids Walk Into the Bank?
I think so, and sometimes kind of ironically as well, like Crossover with the people from Crossover having that kind of shading. But yeah, it is ever present, isn't it, really, through this?
I think there's a few little breaks, but there's a lot of it. It tends to avoid skin tone, but it's kind of present everywhere else, yeah.
My other kind of major problem is this. I kind of didn't like the solution to the story. These are mostly quite positive spins. And in this one, old Earth has been taken over by this gangster family, or at least the area that we see, the place where these characters live. And as you say, her best friend goes under the chopping block, and her ultimate solution is to just leave. and
Yeah,
leave everybody else behind in that mess. And I just think it doesn't feel like a very positive spin on it. Like, if life's too hard, get out of there.
yeah, I agree with you. I think it's not the most logical of endings, or the most like, okay, it might be a logical ending in some ways, but it's not the ending I really expected.
Yeah, it's sort of bleak in not a fun way. There are, to give it some positives, there are a couple of details I really like when she does finally leave, the kind of last thing she does is tie her hair up like her grandma, and I think that's a really nice, kind of bookend from where the story starts. And the character design's pretty decent, but yeah, I say it's not my style of art, and I don't want to be overly negative, but it doesn't do it for me on this occasion.
No, I am inclined to agree with you. I don't know. This didn't really work for me very well. There's some things I like about it. There's those few positive pages where she's like, doing technology and making little washing up robots and junk lifting robot, a forklift robot. That's what I'm looking for here.
She kind of makes an exosuit, and again, it all gets sort of co-opted by her father, doesn't it, to make him more powerful, I guess. And I get that as a story. I don't know, like you could feasibly be unrealistic in this short period to tell the story of how she overcomes her gangster father and kind of frees her neighborhood, but it felt like that was the way it was arcing, and then for ultimately just to leave it all at the end. I don't know, it felt a bit flat for me.
I felt, I was expecting this to end on a kind of, Cindy goes badass and she's going to, take this town back.
Even if she took everybody else. Even if it's a case where she took everybody else with her, there was something else, something a bit more collective, I think would have been maybe more satisfying.
Not just jumping on a rocket and bailing.
Yeah.
No, I agree with that. Yes, I think that's ultimately my takeaway as well. And I think that's all I've really got to say on this one. I don't know.
Yeah, it's funny. I think, did we do the same with the A Wave Blue World one, where the main creator's story was not one of our favourites either?
Quite possibly, yeah. I'd have to go back and
we'll have to see if that remains a trend. But I on the whole, going through this book sort of a second time and writing down my thoughts, there was more positive about it than I remembered on the first reading. And there are the two stories, Rob Robertson and the God's Head, that I just thought were absolutely superb, and then lots of the ones that I thought were really good, and for whatever reason didn't make it to the very top of my list, but I think it's mostly quite good, this.
I agree. I think there's a lot to like here, and as a first anthology from a company, I'm quite eager to see where they go next.
Yeah, and certainly the first work that I've seen of these creators. I'm sure they've done other stuff, but they're not super well-known names at the moment, and I think there's a lot of really great promise for a lot of these creators.
Yeah, definitely. I think there's a ton of potential amongst these 7 or 8 people, and I'm pretty eager to see where some of these creators go and what comes from that. And equally, like I say, Black Hole's a company I'm eager to see what they have in store for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think, it might not be in the digital version, I don't think there's any credits for these, but there are 3 kind of, I guess they're covers at the end, or additional pieces of art.
Yes.
That are superb.
I think we do get credits in the print version, but only for the kind of space manta rays, which is Matt Harding, and then the kind
that one's awesome.
the variant cover, which is the black hole baby thing. I don't know what that is.
Yeah, the kind of Cosmo baby held by an astronaut.
Yeah, is by Dave Chisholm.
That's also very cool, and I very much like the sort of astronaut falling into a black hole double page spread. I think it looks sick.
What's interesting to me is I thought that was going to be in the in the paperback, but it isn't. It's only in the digital edition.
Interesting. Is there an extra one in the hardback? Because I've only got those 3 in my edition.
No, in the paperback we've just got the manta ray type thing, and then the astronaut, and then we've got a thank you page.
I think on this one the thank you page comes first. Oh no. Well, is your thank you page like a list of the people?
Of all the people who backed on Kickstarter.
I see. Mine just says, the end. Thank you for your support in making this dream become a reality. Then I get 3 covers, and then it stops. Which is fine. I've got absolutely no issue with that.
I'm not sure why there's a cover missing. One of the cover pinups is missing from the trade, and I'm not sure why there's a thank you page for the Kickstarters physically but not digitally. That's quite odd.
Maybe it was part of their tiering system. I don't know. Maybe just the digital version on its own didn't pay enough to get a thank you page.
Perhaps, I don't know. Bit weird. Best not to question it too much. But yeah, I think there's some really good stories in this and some really interesting ideas. And I think, I'm looking forward to seeing more from these creators and more from Black Hole Comics. Yeah.
At the very least, it's an interesting read and a worthwhile read. And I hope that it is a platform for some of these people. I say particularly, he struggled over his name somewhat. Let me get it back up before I embarrass myself.
Louis Santamarina.
Louis Santamarina. Yeah, I want to see what Louis Santamarina does next.
Definitely, I'd like to see. I mean, I'd be up for more Robertson.
Yeah, or even just the Adventures of the Scrappers would be rad as well. I like that the planet's called the Flamboyant Zone. It's just all good stuff.
Yeah, inexplicable, but in a way that I'm happy with.
And I don't think it necessarily needs stating, because I think we've probably covered it, but this was my favourite. Robertson was my favourite story, despite its difficulty in pronunciation.
Yeah, I think we're just bad at names.
I think we are. I think that's on us.
We'll get better though, right?
Yeah, I guess so, over time.
So I think that's us for this week.
Yep.
I will be back next week with Angela to discuss the OZ issue 1 in another Kickstarter episode. We're going heavy on them, as I said at the start. And you'll be back later this month for our roundup.
Indeed.
Not sure what we're rounding up yet, so we need to figure that out.
Got a good batch, I think, though, this time.
Yes, it's a good month for comics. So with that in mind, we have been Will and Zach, collectively bigger than capes, and we will continue to be. And remember that comics are bigger than capes.